In this movie, we'll explain how to animate text. I'm going to start with the text layer that was imported from a Photoshop layered file. Before I can edit it or animate it, I need to go to the Layer menu and select Convert to Editable Text. I can see now that it's an After Effects text layer because it has a T to the left of the layer name. Now I can go to the Character menu or the Paragraph menu and make any changes to it. You might like to also select Workspace Text when you're working with text, as it will open these two palettes automatically. Now that I can edit my text, I can select words. I can even change the characters themselves. If there's a typo, I can change the font, the color, and so on. So I can pick a different font. I think for this I'll just pick a different color. We'll make it a little bit lighter. So as you can see, you can mix and match as much as you need to. I'm going to hit the Enter key to make sure the entire layer is selected before I start animating it. Now there's nothing in the character or the paragraph palettes that can be animated. I need to twirl down the layer in the timeline. When I do that, you'll see that there's a section called Text that has a few options here. But the Animation menu is under here, under Animate. Now I can hide all these just to make it simpler for you to look at, and I'll do that by doing Option-Shift on Mac or Alt-Shift on Windows, and we'll just hide these properties that we're not animating. When I click on the Animate button, I see all of the properties that I can animate, including transformations, fill color, stroke color, tracking, line spacing, and even blur, which is nice to add. Let's start with something simple like position. As soon as I select position, Animator 1 appears in the timeline with a range selector and the property that I selected, which was position. You'll notice as I scrub the X-axis, the entire layer moves left to right, and if I scrub the Y-axis, it moves up and down. So the position property is an offset from its original position. The start and end properties also appear in the comp window. You'll notice that there is a bar at the beginning of the text, that's start, and another bar at the end, signifying the end parameter. With all of the letters selected, all of the letters are offset. But if I move the start value, now only the second word is selected. And that's how you set up a simple animation. I just keyframe start, set my first keyframe to 0%, my second keyframe to 100%, and when I press 0 to round preview, that's the basis of a simple animation. If you want to add more properties to your animation, all you need to do is click on Add, Property, and select another one. A very handy one is opacity, because it allows you to animate characters without moving them off screen. For instance, if I set opacity to 0, I can have my text drop into position without having to move it off the top of the screen. Another variation you might like is to twirl down the Advanced section of the Range selector and under Randomize Order, click it and turn it on. Now when I round preview, the text still animates, but it animates in a random order, one character at a time. For our second example, we're going to show you a great new feature in CS3. To animate this text, I'll twirl down the text layer, and I'll do the same thing again, just to simplify the timeline. Option-Shift or Alt-Shift on Windows, and we'll just hide those properties we're not dealing with. This time when I click on Animate, I'll select Rotation. Now with the normal 2D layer, when I animate rotation, this is the result I get. In CS3, I have the option of clicking on the Add button to add a new property, but instead of adding a property, I'll go up right to the top and enable Per Character 3D. Notice that rotation now changes to X, Y, and Z rotation, and any value I had when it was in 2D will now be the Z rotation. Return that to 0, and let me show you the two new ones, X rotation and Y rotation. This time when I animate, let's just set X rotation to 180 degrees and Y rotation to 0, and let's set up an animation. This time, instead of animating start like I did before, which only animates one character at a time, I want to have a little bit more fun. So I'm going to twirl down the advanced section and change the shape from square to ramp up. Now you'll notice that I get a completely different effect. The start and end parameters set the transition between normal text and rotated text. And this allows us, in combination with offset, to set up a more interesting animation where more than one of the characters rotate at a time. So here's the recipe. Once I set the shape to ramp up, I set start to 0, end to however many characters I want to have included, let's say 40%, and my first keyframe for offset will be negative whatever the end value is. In this case, negative 40%. I know this sounds a little odd, just bear with me. We animate offset from negative of whatever the end is, and our second value will be 100%. And notice what happens is you get a nice cascading animation. Now this is 3D text. If I set the 3D view pop-up to custom view 1 and RAM preview, you can see there's a lot of perspective happening here. And I can do Y rotation, Z rotation, RAM preview again, and get a more exciting animation. Because this layer is in 3D, if I click on Add, Property, Position, notice Position now has X, Y, and Z values. If I change the Z value for position, positive values will send the text behind and negative values bring it forward. Again, RAM preview, and you can see the rotation and position values. And again, sometimes adding property opacity means you don't always have to bring text in from off screen. It can be invisible when it's waiting in the wings. Because this is a 3D text layer, you can take it to the next level, add cameras and lights and other layers that are also in 3D, and this animated text can cast drop shadows on other layers. And you'll see here I've also turned on randomize order that we saw in the first example. Per Character 3D is a powerful new feature of After Effects CS3.